Last summer, I visited Charleston in South Carolina specifically to explore their graveyards. Out of all the ones located in the historic district, the best headstones, in my opinion, can be found in the Circular Church Graveyard, founded in 1681. As I slowly strolled along the winding paths, melting in southern humidity, I was surprised by the amount of graves carved by Boston stonecutters. Occasionally, I'd come across a skull and bones by John Homer, a winged cherub carved by the Lamsons, but when it came to a definitive local style, the dead of Charleston preferred to have their portraits chiseled into their headstones. Nearly all of them were carved by two Boston stonecutters, Henry Eames and William Codner. If you look closely, you'll sometimes see their signatures, which acted like long-distance business cards for future commissions. Because they both trained under Henry's father, Nathaniel Eames, it can be difficult to tell their styles apart. Although it isn't always the case, Eames typically bent the tail of the G into the counter itself. When it comes to their portraits, a few are carved in high relief, projecting a considerable depth from the surface of the slate. The majority, however, are carved within a ribbed oval, surrounded by swirling acanthus leaves and, occasionally, a stippled background. The shape of the tympanum typically varies between two styles. Codner preferred a tympanum that begins with a small semicircle, followed by an elegant curve which abruptly turns into small 90-degree brackets, which then arcs like a rainbow over the oval portrait. Eames, on the other hand, preferred a tympanum with bulging semicircles, followed by a cresting wave that curls into and pinches the oval portrait between them. Based on James Gibbs' Book of Architecture, Henry Eames preferred imagery more classical in nature, such as busts sitting atop Baroque pedestals with flowing robes, elegant gowns, and beautifully carved curling hair. Note how lifelike his facial features are, as well as his body postures. William Codner also used Gibbs' Book of Architecture for inspiration, but he developed a unique style that is a bit more clunky, for lack of a better word, which I actually prefer to the realism of Eames. The heads are more bulbous, with large, beady eyes. And although a tad cartoonish, they seem to capture an expression, spirit, or personality that Eames's lacks. Take, for instance, the cheerful smile of Mary Owens, considered to be one of the finest carved portraits in America. Note Codner's attention to fashion. Owens is wrapped in a multi-layered shawl that is tied beneath her chin. Note the subtle pearl necklace, as well as pointed geometric neckerchief. Codner dressed Elizabeth Holmes in a more youthful, beautiful dress with necklace. She was, after all, just 20 years old when she died, and is immortalized in an outfit with cuffed sleeves, corset bodice, and a beautiful flower embroidered on her undergarment. Considering all the unique features for each portrait, it seems fairly clear that these carvings are of actual people, and not just filler busts depicting generic colonial men and women. So how, then, were these likenesses captured? In letters corresponding with Boston stonecutters, perhaps the family included detailed written descriptions of the dead's facial features and attire, in addition to the desired epitaph. Or maybe the dead had posed for a portrait while they were living. This portrait is thought to be of Isaac Holmes. Was it used as the basis for his grave? During the 17th century, we know that Charleston had an abundance of artists specializing in miniature portraits. So many, in fact, that today the Gibbs Museum of Art has an entire department devoted to this once thriving art form. Here are some miniatures created in Charleston during the same period in which Eames and Codner were carving in Boston. If a portrait was not executed while the sitter was alive, there is a very plausible possibility that one of these miniature artists was hired to sketch the corpse after they had died. This drawing could then be sent to the stonecutter for reference. A posthumous portrait is not that crazy of a concept. Many Renaissance portraits were painted post-mortem, such as Francesca's portrait of the Duchess of Urbino. In Philadelphia in 1772, Charles Willson Peale painted his dead daughter, who had succumbed to smallpox. In the early 1800s, P.R. Vallee captured the dead bride, Harriet Mackey. And after daguerreotypes were invented in 1839, we began to see many examples of corpses propped up in family photos before being buried. Unfortunately, I can't prove this morbid theory regarding Charleston's grave, since no drawings or even letters to the stonecutters regarding this matter have survived, but it is fun to consider. For those in New England who can't make it down south, but still want to view this particular style of graves, I highly recommend visiting these cemeteries. Starting in the South Shore, in Plymouth's Burying Hill, you can find the stone and likeness of John Watson, as well as Patience Watson with her heart necklace. In Boston, in Dorchester's North Burying Ground, you can find this dashing portrait of John Foster, perhaps the only likeness of a colonial stonecutter we have. His wardrobe is absolutely incredible. To the west, in Mendon's Old Town Cemetery, the portrait of Reverend Grindal Rawson lives on. In the North Shore, in Ipswich's Old North Cemetery, you can view the stern countenance of the Reverend Nathaniel Rogers, carved by Daniel Hastings. In Portsmouth, New Hampshire, you have the portrait of Abigail Frost, and in Maine, the portrait of the Honorable John Wheelwright. If you want to read more about Southern graves, two interesting reads are Early Gravestone Art in Georgia and South Carolina by Diana Combs, and Tomb and Gravestones of the 18th Century by David Gillespie. So yeah, thanks for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe. And for those Taphophiles who really enjoyed this content, please consider making a donation to either my Venmo or Patreon account, which will unlock bonus content about this subject. It takes a lot of time and effort making these videos, so I appreciate the support.